my name is Taylor Allen. I am currently in my second year of teaching at the Waterloo Community School District, where I teach high school Spanish. I am also a student at Ashford University, where I am pursuing my Master's of Arts in Education with a specialization in teaching English to speakers of other languages. The interview you are about to see is with my former colleague and dear friend Quinn Zizis. Quinn is in her 4th year of teaching, with this being her first year teaching ELL at the elementary level. This interview touches on many key points of ELL learning and teaching, so I hope you find this interview to be informative as well as enjoyable. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so I am currently an ELL teacher at 2 elementary schools in the Waterloo Community School District. Previously, I was a German teacher for 3 years at Waterloo, also in the Waterloo District. After high school, I did my undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in German education, and I got a minor in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages. And after living abroad for a while, I decided to, in Europe, I decided to get my master's. That's why I moved to Cedar Falls at the University of Northern Iowa in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages. So that is my background in both my career and education. Okay, so I decided to become an ESL teacher simply because I've always found myself drawn to people with diverse backgrounds. I liked the idea of, instead of having a classroom full of American students, having students from all over the world with different languages, completely different schemas. So I guess that's what really drew me to that. I also have always had an affinity for language, and especially English. So that is why I chose to become an ELL teacher. Okay, so the biggest difference by far between teaching German and teaching ELL was obviously the age difference. I went from teaching high school to teaching elementary. Huge jump, and in fact it was more of a difference than I anticipated it to be. And there's a lot of other factors that play into that too. For example, motivation. I found that it is much easier to motivate a group of elementary students to do what you're asking them to do than high school students. So that was a big factor. I found that parental involvement is much higher at the elementary level. So I am continually in contact with parents and involved with what's happening at home. We're always having conversations about that. So that was a big difference. I think another very, very significant difference was the fact that these students have to learn English to survive in their environment. Teaching German in a foreign setting, it's not, they enjoy it, they chose to be there, but it still doesn't have the same weight as the fact that these kids are now living in the United States. They have to speak this language to survive. Many of them are the sole communicator for their family, so it's essential that they learn English as a second language in order to, help their family and to be successful in the United States. All right, so I should preface this question with the fact that I teach K through 2 at the elementary level, and I also do teach adult ELL at night at a local community college. But some effective strategies that I use with my younger group, a lot of visuals is very important. It's probably also important for me to say that I have a range of students. I have some that are newcomers, and also the kindergartners who are very low. There also are students who have been in the country for a while, have been speaking English for, second graders for 2 or 3 years, but so their oral language is can be very high, but then in regards to reading and writing, they tend to be very low. So there's those differences to keep in mind as I explain some of these strategies. So with the younger group, with kindergartners and newcomers, we use a lot of songs and chants for vocab, lots and lots of visuals. We do lots of actions, TPR, we use our bodies for a lot of things to help with memorization. We do a lot of sight words. We've got different activities for sight words. Kindergartners are supposed to know 50 sight words by the end of their kindergarten year, so we spend a lot of time doing that. Obviously also with kindergartners, letters, capital and lowercase, sounds, and we do lots of chants and stuff with that. For the older groups, so second graders who again have been speaking English for a while, and some of them, when you hear them, they sound quite fluent, and you wouldn't even know that they are ELLs, but when you take a look at their writing, they are behind, they are lacking in vocabulary. So we do a lot of vocab work with second graders, especially tier 2 terms, which are the terms that are geared more towards academics. So an example of that would be like, let's see, an example something you would use, like perhaps would be a tier 2 word, to mediate, okay? So we do a lot of vocab for those. We do a lot of writing, and in order for them to be successful in writing, it takes a lot of teacher modeling. So for example, we will do work as a group. So right now with my second graders, we're writing persuasive letters. And so first we've talked about what it is. We have discussed, we map it out. We do a lot of story mapping. We do a lot of charts and stuff to get their ideas organized. And then from that point, we then move into actually writing the letter. But we do each of those steps together as a class, and I model for them exactly what they need to do, because if they go into it not having any idea, you never quite get what you're looking for. Let's see, I use a lot of anchor charts. So for example, back to this persuasive writing, they're writing it in the form of a letter. So I have an anchor chart up that shows this is what a heading is, reading, here's the body, here's the closing, here's the signature. So there's anchor charts covering all of our ELL rooms so that they can reference those, just to help them as they're working on various writing. We work on a lot of idioms as well. I don't think we realize as native speakers how much we use idioms on a daily basis, and it's very important that they hear them and become familiar with them, because they are new to the language. A gen ed student has been listening to idioms for 7 or 8 years by the time they get to second grade, whereas ELL students have only been hearing them for 2 years, so we need to make sure that they're getting the skills they need in that area. So those are just some of the things we use. Go. I don't think that I'm more or less successful with any one minority, but the best advice that I can give an ELL teacher who's just starting is to familiarize yourself with the language, the L1s of the students that you will have. It's good to know all the different aspects and characteristics of different languages. For example, it's good to know that Asian languages are tonal. It's good to know word order in different languages, so that would be my biggest suggestion, so that you can target or pinpoint why errors are occurring when you're hearing them and seeing them in writing. For example, it's good to know that with native Hispanic speakers, a lot of times you're getting, the pronunciation of y is j, so instead of saying yellow, you hear jello. And it's just, in order to, like I said, change that and correct that error, it's good to know why it's happening. It makes it easier on you as a teacher. Even more so, I think, than knowing the different languages come from a different aspect. So outside of academics, it's good to familiarize yourself with cultural aspects too. For example, in a lot of Asian cultures, they don't make eye contact with you, they seem very subdued, they're very quiet, and it's just important to know that that's a part of their culture as well. They're not, it's not that they're disrespecting you, in fact it's quite the opposite. They're being respectful towards you by not, having eye contact. So there's lots of different things in different cultures to be aware of, so that you as the teacher, you don't offend anybody, and just knowing the reasoning why this is happening it lets you. So for example, like if a student is looking down and not looking at me, I don't think, what's wrong? Something happened to you today? No, I know that this particular student is from China, and this is what he's been taught, and this is a cultural thing. So it's just good to be aware. I guess I could say, if I have to say which group I have had the most trouble with, recently in the Waterloo area, we have gotten a lot of, so I would say that if there was any group that I did struggle the most with, or maybe even a better way to word it would be learn the most from, like I said, I teach adult ELL at night in a community college, and we recently in the area got a large number of Burmese refugees. And this was the first time for me that I was involved with a group who had a seriously traumatic history as an entire, the whole group, the entire culture. So in the beginning, I was actually a brand new ELL teacher too. So the whole concept of having students with such severe trauma was, I have no experience with this. I have nothing to base it off of. I've never experienced anything myself remotely near this. So I felt like looking back, I think I didn't do what I should have. And what I should have done is what I do now, is I keep myself informed and this is important, by looking it up online. Because you don't want to simply outright ask someone about their history and what's going on, because you don't want to bring up these emotions and feelings that could really, they're hurtful and they're not good memories. So I took to the internet, I asked people around who were familiar with the group, and I educated myself on what had happened in Myanmar, Burma, and was much better and was a much better teacher for this group of people. I can remember one instance where I had noticed, this is before I knew that I needed to educate myself, a group of my students, I had about 5 or 6 at the time in my class, and they came in and I could tell they were very, again, they're very quiet as an Asian culture, but they were more solemn than usual. The whole mood over the class was very, very sad, and I had no idea what was going on. So I looked into the situation, asked around, and it turned out that in one of the refugee camps in Thailand, there had been a huge fire that had taken lives, pretty much wiped out the entire camp. And all of my students had family, friends, and relatives who were injured or killed in this fire. So here they are in the United States, and then they have family this is happening to on the other side of the world. And I had no idea. So I think that's my biggest advice towards a new teacher is, not only do you need to familiarize yourself with the different languages of your students, but also the cultural history, cultural norms, and any sort of trauma you should definitely be aware of. Okay, so I don't think that I wouldn't say between language group, different students with different languages or different cultures, I don't know there's any one group that learns English easier than another, but I will mention a couple of things that definitely play a role in why some students excel more than others. And the first is parental involvement. I can't tell you how important it is, especially for my young learners, K2. Parents who are involved and who are going home reading to and with their child, who are doing the sight words and doing the sounds, and those children definitely grasp the language faster than those who are going home and doing nothing. And it doesn't even matter if they are doing it in the L1. If the parent is going home and working on letters and working on sounds, for example, okay, I have a student who's 6 years old, he is from Serbia, and did not start speaking English at all, or even really hearing it until he started kindergarten in August. And, but his parents don't speak any English, but his mother every night is working on writing and reading sounds, letters in Serbian with this child, which, it is the same alphabet as English, and he has just soared because of that. Today, in fact, we just worked on the 50 sight words you're supposed to know after kindergarten. He got 49 of them correct. This is a kid who, in August, couldn't say a single word. it was really cool actually to watch his language develop from, single vocabulary to chunking to now he's speaking in sentences, and probably one of my highest ELL kindergartners right now. So parental involvement is huge. And what's funny is that, not funny, but really it's tragedy, that they were trying to put him in IEP. They were trying to give him an IEP at the beginning of the year, and you just, as their ELL teacher, really have to be an advocate for them and say, no, this is a language issue. There is not a learning disability by any means here. This is normal. He will catch up, and you just have to continually tell your administrators, the other teachers, the parents, even just let them know and make them aware that they will catch up. But it's still important that they're going home and they're working on any sort of schoolwork, even if it is in the L1. Let's see, anything else that makes them more or less parental involvement. I am also a huge advocate for, and I think every ELL teacher should be, encouraging parents to continue to speak the first language at home. I had one parent this year, this particular student was from China, and his mother speaks English, but struggles. And she was telling me that the father does not speak any English, but she was speaking to English to this particular student at home. And I told her she should absolutely not, because what a tragedy it would be if this child was never hearing Mandarin and then one day lost it, and then is unable to speak to his father because his father does not speak English. So huge advocate for growing up with dual languages. It's a big advantage. There's lots of research out there showing that students who are learning two languages at the same time excel just as much or more than a monolingual student. So I would say that's a big advantage. So it doesn't matter, to me, there's not a group that's more difficult or less than any other, or that gets ahead of one group or the other. There's a lot of the other factors: motivation, parental involvement, how comfortable they are in the setting. Those things, I think, play a big role, not what their L1 is or necessarily what their cultural backgrounds are. Okay, I differentiate my instruction, I think, like everybody else does. You try and do things that are geared more towards ELL, though you have to remember these are not students with IEPs, these are not Title I students, they are ELL students. You have to keep that in mind. Do your research, figure out, know your students, where are their shortcomings happening? Is it reading, writing? What can you do to fix that? But just some basic things that I do, again, with ELLs, especially newcomers who have a very small vocabulary. Visuals are huge. We're lucky enough in the Waterloo School District to have Prometheans, big old smart boards, so makes using visuals very easy. It's also good as an ELL teacher to be very to use a lot of movements, to be very, just use your body to get messages across, over-exaggerate, be dramatic. Even though you feel ridiculous when you're doing it, the kids really do enjoy it, especially, the little kids, they enjoy it, and it does help them understand the message better, and different, vocabulary as well. We do a lot of checking with students. There is one other ELL teacher in each of my buildings. We do a lot of PLCing, and we make a lot of CFAs, common formative assessments, so that we can be checking in on our students. So I think we do more CFAs than a classroom teacher would for a gen ed student, simply because we need to be sure that these kids are understanding the material. And that's the best way to do it. It doesn't always have to be, written down. It can be a quick check as they're going out the door, an exit ticket, whatever. But CFAs are a big part of how we differentiate to make sure that they're getting the content. Of course, there's always, and this I think is pretty common, people do this a lot in terms of differentiation. We offer options for homework and projects that allow us to do that. So for example,
you know, if you want them to discuss or do a project on the Alamo, then give them the option to, okay, you know, first option would be write a newspaper article about the battle at the Alamo, as if you are a, you know, if you work for a newspaper, or make a brochure, you know, like you are. You're like a tour guide, and make the brochure for the current Alamo in 2014. If you were going to show people or try and get people to come and visit there, what would you put in your brochure? Or you're a broadcaster, you're a TV broadcaster, you know, back when the Battle of the Alamo is taking place. So you're offering options for them. They can, you know, write. The article is geared more towards, you know, writing. Brochures for people who are more creative, visual, who like pictures. And then you've got for the broadcaster, they are using their verbal language. So where a project allows for you to do that, I would suggest just offering those options. They feel like they have more freedom. You might even get more involvement because they feel like they have more control over the project. So we found it to be very successful, so we use it a lot, and I think it just makes them feel more comfortable. You know, ELLs, they're in control. It's their language. If they feel better about their receptive skills, then they can use that. If they're more comfortable with their productive skills, then they can go that route. So that is how we differentiate in our ELL classroom. Okay, future goals for my students. For my elementary students, I just want them to be comfortable moving on to the next level, especially for my kindergartners and first graders. Second graders, they're getting to the point where, as I stated, the research shows that they actually pull ahead of monolinguals. I would love to see my students do that, have higher reading and test scores than a general ed monolingual student. So I think that's a personal goal of mine, maybe not for them, but I think we want to see DRA2 scores jump up. That's a big standardized test that elementary students take. So to see those jump would be great. Just prepare them to be lifelong independent learners and enjoy the language. Don't think of it as a burden. So just be successful after elementary school. You can't hope for anything more than that. And to continue speaking both languages. Of course, I want, you know, it's such an advantage. It's a gift, really, for these kids to be able to speak two languages and so easily. They're, you know, for my little kiddos, they're at the age where it's not hard to acquire both languages. They can sound near native or native even. So it's a huge advantage to have two languages, and I want them to be aware of that and to use that in whatever their future endeavors are. For myself, I've thrown around the idea for a few years of maybe going back for a PhD, but I think I would really, you know, typically with a PhD, I don't think I would be in the classroom anymore. Usually you go for, you know, other jobs. You'd want to be in a college somewhere, and I think that I would miss the classroom. I would miss teaching ELL students. So, you know, we'll see about that. But I have started recently thinking seriously again about going abroad and teaching ELL, English as a Foreign Language. I really enjoyed it my first time, and I think that this time, the first time I did it in Europe. I would really like to see and see how it's working in Asia. You know, it's huge there right now. You go online and you see job boards. The job board is covered in jobs in Asia. I think I would like to be a part of that, even just if it's for a little while. But I have to say, I'm really satisfied with where I'm at right now in my job. I love my job, both jobs. It's nice having the different ages. You know, there's good things that come with little kids, and there's good things that come with adults. So I guess I'm just really happy with where things are at, and I couldn't ask for any more. Being an ELL teacher is everything I hoped it would be and more. I find myself smiling all the time during the day. I really enjoy what I do.